Now, if they are, like we mentioned in the revenue information bulletin, if they're self-employed, independent contractor, gig worker, that does not disqualify them for the rebate program. They will just have to provide in this section here who their client or service recipient or payor was, address, description of services provided. And then because they're self-employed, they're not being required by an employer to engage in a certain type of work. They're going to have to let us know how those services were substantially dedicated to responding or mitigating to the COVID-19 health emergency. And they can upload that at the time of filing through this attachment function here. Or if they submit the return without any additional information, that will probably prompt a letter from the department where we will ask for them to let us know exactly what you were doing and how that impacted the COVID-19 response, so that we can have the information we need to approve the application. All right, we'll click next from here, and that brings us to the direct deposit screen. So we're nearly done at this point. We've entered all into the main qualifying information. Now we're just going to ask you, do you want a direct deposit of your rebate? Very similar to a tax refund, they'll just click yes. These questions mirror what's on the state tax return. They have to say that no, they're not going to send the money overseas. That's a question we have to ask. And then they'll just fill out the information as it's requested. For the routing number, they'll be able to, as they enter in the routing number, if it is in the system and certified as a bank's routing number, it'll populate the name of the bank right here, and they'll enter the account number twice for confirmation. A couple of notes for the direct deposit issue. So if this is the first time they've ever filed anything with the Department of Revenue, such as a tax return, if they've never filed a return with us before, we're not going to be direct depositing those rebates. We won't be able to clear it through our internal fraud check process. So they will have had to file a tax return previously to get direct deposit. Otherwise, it's just going to, the system will automatically change it to a paper check refund. The other item of note is right here. This is also in the emergency rule, and it says that the name of the applicant must be the name on the bank account. The reason for that is sometimes we will see that with tax returns, an individual may visit a certain tax return preparer or potentially a loan company that will file a return for them and retain a percentage of whatever the refund is. We did not want to inadvertently create this secondary loan market by way of this rebate program. So we're not allowing the rebates to, thousands of rebates to go to this loan company that may be operating. It has to be, if you're the applicant, I'm Luke Morris and I'm applying for a rebate, my rebate has to go into an account that is owned by Luke Morris. So little taxpayer applicant protection issue there. We'll just click no on here because I don't have a routing number memorized, and move to the next screen. And this is the paid preparer section. This application is very straightforward, very simple. We're not expecting, or we don't even think people need to have paid preparers to fill out the application, but if they so choose, similar to a tax return, we're required to collect this information under separate state statutes. So if they are visiting a practitioner or a family member who may be getting compensation for it, they'll just fill out their information here. But again, in most cases, we expect them to not need a preparer to fill out this application. Then we'll click next from here, and this will be the review screen. So everything that they entered up until this point will be displayed under each of these subheadings. So if they would like to print a copy of the application for their records, all they need to do is expand each of these and then go to File Print, and they can print a copy for themselves. But all the information will be redisplayed for them at this point, and they'll be able to go back and review it one more time before clicking the Submit button, or the Next button, I should say. And before I go into the signature section, I wanted to say too that all of this information that is being submitted, both from the online applications as well as the paper applications, is going to be recorded in our system. So while we can't, same as with a tax return, we cannot disclose what any one applicant put on their application, we are going to prepare a statistical report after the close of this application period and let stakeholders such as the legislature and the governor's office know that we had, let's say, X number of child service providers that applied and were approved for the rebate. Or going back to the contact screen, we had X number of individuals from Tangipahoa Parish that applied and were approved. So we will have at the conclusion of this program, we'll have those statistical reports available for anyone that is interested. And then if we click next from this screen, this is the final step, it's the signature and submission page. They will have to declare under penalties of perjury and potential recapture of the rebate issue that all the information they provided was correct. They will also have to agree on the front end that they consent to LWC sharing data with LDR for purposes of us getting that employment information to verify in our system. So they will have to consent to that as well. They'll enter in their signature here, click submit, and then they will enter in an email for confirmation purposes. Once those two emails match and they click OK, it will bring them to this thank you page. They will have a 6-digit confirmation code that they'll be able to print out if they choose. But at this moment, when they see this screen they will have completed and submitted their application. On our end, we will be in receipt of the application and we will begin running those internal verification processes to see if there's anything missing from the application or the answers on the application make them ineligible, and that would trigger request letters to go out the door, and then we'll move from that point there. A few other things I wanted to mention. This is the emergency rule that was filed yesterday with the register, so it is in effect for the next 120 days, and it explains the more detailed provisions of this program that we are responsible for administering. A lot of it is coming from the statute. So again, like the list of job categories that qualify are coming directly from statute and they are repeated in the regulation. Scrolling down, we talk about how the application works. For example, if you file more than one application or both the electronic and paper application, we're only going to review the first one that we receive and the other ones will be denied. We talk about the request letter process in here and they have 30 days to respond to that. We will be offsetting the rebate as is explained in the information bulletin for only delinquent child support payments and delinquent spousal support payments. And then we do encourage various creditors and banks to make sure that they do not seize these funds. They are exempt from general seizure provisions. Now, the main thing I want to talk about there is the program cap. The legislature has appropriated $50 million from the Federal CARES Act disbursement for this program. At $50 million total cap for $250 rebates, that is enough for the first 200,000 applicants. So there will be anyone that applies after that first 200,000, we will maintain their name and information and keep them in line for priority purposes in case the legislature does appropriate more money into the fund and we can make disbursements later down the road. But to our paper application, which I'm going to show you in just a moment, we are reserving 25% of that 50 million cap to be reserved for paper applications. The concern was that with the electronic application, you may have a large group of people submit that application tomorrow. At the same time, you may have individuals file their paper application, but it doesn't show up in the department's mailbox for 3 to 5 business days. We didn't want the individuals that maybe didn't have means necessary to file an electronic application that had to use the paper application and mail it in. We wanted to make sure that they had some reserved level of the cap, which is that 25% number. If we don't receive all those paper applications and everyone files electronically, that will be fine as well, and we'll just reallocate that $12.5 million to the overall cap. And then the last thing that I want to show you is the paper application. Give me just a second to switch over my screen. All right, this is the paper application, and it's going to look almost completely identical to the electronic application. We do have a dedicated PO box for them to mail completed applications to, and this will be the phone number. It's the standard LDR call center number where they can call and ask questions about the applications. If they are confused about what specific sentence means, they can call in and receive help from one of our call center representatives. They will not be able to we won't be filling out the application for anyone, but we will be able to point them in the right direction if they do have questions or whatever the case may be. But again, this should all look very familiar. It's the same information, just on paper form that they would either fill out on their own computer, although we would prefer it electronic again, or they can print it out and fill it out by hand. This form will be available on the department's website, and we're also distributing it out to various stakeholders so that they can make them available to individuals. Employer information, that's all the same. Direct deposit, the signature section. One thing to point out, you notice that there's only one signature box. If you have a married couple that are both frontline workers, they have to submit 2 different applications. There are no joint applications like you have with the tax return. They would each fill out one. And then the 3rd page here is just some instructions that guide them in filling out pages 1 and 2. And then page 4 is just a recap of all the different job positions. And see, here we have codes over to the left. When they go back to page 1, if the person is a nurse, they're code 11. They'll go back to this page at the bottom, and they'll list the code from the job table, which they'll write in 11 here and check the box yes. And I think that about covers everything. So I will turn it back over to you, Secretary.